Hello everyone, I'm MP Hater, and welcome to my beginner's guide to Dark Souls Remastered. Now why am I making a walkthrough for an old video game? Well, Elden Ring has made the Soulsborne games more popular than ever, and it's getting an expansion soon. New players are playing these games, and I want to help them with the game that I think they should start with. For some background, I started my journey with these games with the original Demon Souls, but I bounced off it and Dark Souls pretty hard because I just didn't have the right expectations going in. I later tried Sekiro, which is also part of this series of games, and I reached a boss I couldn't beat through luck and retries alone. That had always been my process for playing video games, and I was too stubborn at first to learn the mechanics these games had been trying to teach me. Eventually, something clicked, however, and I experienced the endorphin rush these games are known for, and I ended up falling in love with the series and the genre. These games are known for the difficulty, but they aren't nearly as hard as people make them out to be. These games do troll the player, however, but once you get past that, most of your deaths are just learning experiences. My goal with this walkthrough is to preserve that rush, while also trying to point out the mechanics that will ensure you succeed. Now before we get started, I do want to call out how the online play works and help you decide whether that's for you or not. In my case, I'm going to head under System and Network Settings. I'm on PC with an Xbox controller, so I'll be referencing the controls as such. And I currently have the game set to start offline. Now for me, I have it set that way because there are going to be moments where I'm standing in front of a boss door talking about boss strategy and I don't want to be invaded. And that's something that will happen in the game whenever you are running around in the game as a human, which is something we'll talk about a little bit whenever we get into the game. And if you're already struggling with the game, being invaded by someone who's come to kill you can be super degrading, especially if you've already been, if you're already frustrated with the game. So I'm going to leave it to you to kind of decide on whether you play the game online or offline. That being said, there are some things, some items that you're not going to be able to get unless you play the game online. Likewise, there's an entire class of weapons that's pretty hard to get leveled up if you don't play online. That being said though, I'm not going to be using any of that gear. I'm only going to get stuff in this game that any player can get, absent any luck on any online play or any overage of skill. So I'm going to go and start a new game, and in the process we get to create ourselves a new character. So we get to choose what our class is going to be, which is kind of our first real choice to make. That being said though, don't think too hard about this. This is basically just an archetype, nothing more. That being said though, the warrior is the closest to what I would recommend most players start with, which is what's commonly referred to as a quality build. To understand what a quality build is, I'm going to talk about the stats. I'm also going to talk about the 5 other different, I could just say, play styles that you can go for in this game. The first stat that we have is Vitality, and that's going to affect your overall health. Attunement is going to affect how many spells you can wield at once, or spell slots. Endurance is going to end up affecting how much gear you can have equipped. It's also going to affect your stamina gauge. And then Strength, Dexterity, Intelligence, and Faith are all going to factor into how much damage you do if you're using weapons that scale with those stats. And there are weapons that do scale with those stats, and there are weapons that don't. Weapons that scale with those stats will pick, maybe 1, 2, or even all of these stats and scale with them. Whereas weapons that don't scale with stats typically start off strong, but the only way to get them leveled up is to level up the item itself. So we are going to end up focusing on Strength and Dexterity, which is basically going to be kind of a middle ground between two extremes. Strength all the way basically means you're going to have a really big beefy weapon, but you're probably going to be pretty slow. Going Dexterity, on the other hand, means that you're going to prioritize mobility, but you're probably not going to do as much damage for your attacks. We're going to be picking the middle ground there, which is what we commonly refer to as quality. But there are 3 different magic classes you can also pick too. If you're interested in Pyromancy, which is fire-based magic, then you can go for that. However, you're going to be diverting about half of your total levels into leveling up the Pyromancy Flame item in the game, as well as into buying your spells. Then there are 2 other more general purpose schools of magic, which include sorceries, which is governed by the intelligence stat, and miracles, which are governed by the faith stat, to which you'll probably be a cleric. So all of those are going to be kind of the main, I guess you could say, 6 play styles, and really all of these character types, these classes, are going to fall into 1 or 2 of those. But again, the warrior is going to land firmly where we want to be for strength and dexterity, and putting equal efforts into both is going to give us, in my opinion, one of the funner playthroughs, as well as one of the easier playthroughs. Now for the gift, we have really two options here that stand out among the others. In reality, you're going to get all these items in the game anyway, but if you start off with the black fire bombs, there's a boss that we can kill right up front. And if we happen to kill that boss first thing, we get to basically his weapon. Now if you're not going for a strength build, there's hardly a reason to bother with this. And the other option is going to end up being the Master Key, which allows you to get access to some areas a little earlier than you otherwise would have access to them. And that's going to be the item that I recommend you start with. For everything else though, I'm going to go ahead and pick all of the defaults. So this game has an interesting story, but I'm going to go ahead and skip all the cutscenes. You can watch those if you want. That being said, the story is a little vague, so if you're invested in a story like this, you can absolutely do things like read item descriptions, pay attention to the environmental storytelling in the game, talk to and pay attention to what NPCs say, and you'll get a pretty interesting story. But this game is definitely more focused on the gameplay. For now though, we're going to go ahead and pick up the dungeon cell key, and before we move on, I want to talk about how some of the combat mechanics work, especially some of the ones that are not so obvious. Now, I can roll by holding a direction and pressing B, and while that seems pretty obvious that you can roll out of the way out of an enemy attack range, it also has a secondary purpose. Whenever you roll, you are invulnerable for a portion of your roll animation. So oftentimes you're going to be rolling into an enemy attack in order to get yourself into a better position for their follow-up attack. Enemies in this game have different attacks, and they have attack patterns based on how close you are, as well as what side you're basically attacking them from. So that's something to consider whenever you're fighting, and it's something that I'm going to call out whenever I think it might be better for you to roll into an enemy attack than to try to outright avoid it. That being said, though, right now we have what's commonly referred to as a fat roll. I'm sorry, a normal roll. If we get over 50% of our max equip load, though, we're going to have what's commonly referred to as a fat roll. So there are three different kind of classes of rolls. We have a fast roll, and a fast roll is, as it can be seen, fast. You actually have more invincibility frames during this animation, and the animation itself is actually shorter. Once you hit 25% of your max equip load, you're going to have a normal roll. So again, a little bit slower animation, fewer frames that we're actually invulnerable for. And then if we do get our equip load beyond the 50% range, and that's 50% of 52, unfortunately it doesn't show your percentage sign here. Once you get to that point, though, you're going to be doing what's called fat rolls or slow rolls. And that's really not going to be the type of thing you're going to want to do if you are a character who needs to be mobile, because you're not going to be able to move as efficiently. That being said, though, if you are a heavy-duty strength build, big boy, for example, you can definitely not worry so much about that, because you're going to be prioritizing getting your poise up high. Poise is actually a stat that you can't level up, but it is affected by your gear. And based on what gear you have, that number will go up, and you will be able to withstand enemy attacks without flinching or stopping. So a strength build needs to be able to keep bashing their weapon over and over and over without stopping and without interruption. And poise is going to be that stat for you. But in our case, us playing the build that we are playing, we need to be a little bit mobile. In addition to that, we have a couple of different attack options. We can press R1 or right bumper, and that'll do a single-handed attack. You can also press R2, which is a heavier attack. You can also two-hand the weapon. Now, two-handing has some important distinctions. Of course, you've got your attacks, which are a little bit faster, but you also get stronger while you're two-handing, and that's because you get 1.5 times your current strength value while you are two-handing. And that comes into play especially if you're a strength build, because as a strength build, you want to be able to equip heavy gear earlier, gear that requires higher strength. And let's say that you are at 16 strength right now, and the weapon that you have requires more than that. Well, if you two-hand the weapon, you get 1.5 times that, so you'll now have 24 strength, as long as you're two-handing that weapon. So that's really, really important, especially if you're going to be doing a strength build. That being said, though, we're going to be using a sword and shield most of the game, so We will occasionally, of course, switch over to two-handed for the extra damage, but we do want to be able to block. So if you try to block using two-handed, A, you won't be able to parry, which is something we'll talk about later, and B, you'll be blocking with your weapon, which will be much less effective than blocking with an actual shield. With that, though, we're going to go ahead and move on and head through the door. Now, along the path here, you see different messages on the ground. These are the controls for new players, and these are messages left by the developers. Later in the game, though, you'll be able to see messages left by other players, and sometimes they'll be there to troll you or to help you. And trust me, the developers love trolling players, so the community loves trolling players too. So we're going to follow this path up. One thing I want to call out about the ladders is that you can press and hold B, and that will cause you to go down the ladder fast. A lot of people think this was an addition in a later Souls game, but it's actually been around since Dark Souls. We're also going to go ahead and head out here, and we have our first bonfire. Now, bonfires have a bunch of utility, but the main use of it is going to be to regain all of your health, and then it will also respawn all of the enemies in the game to their original locations. So that can be either a positive or a negative depending on how you see it, but there are other things that having access to a bonfire will give you, and we'll talk about those in due time. For now, though, we're going to go ahead and head forward, and I'm going to open up this door. Now, if you picked up the black fire bombs, this is actually the moment where you can nail this boss with about 4 of them, and you'll get that weapon that they have. As you can see up there, he's lying in wait for us. We have a broken sword, though. We can't hope to kill this guy, so we're just going to run. But absolutely melt this guy with the fire bombs if you grabbed him as your starting gear. Down here, we're going to run into another bonfire, and this bonfire is going to apologies, my dog. I think she's saving me. Anyway, so the most recently rested at bonfire is going to end up being the one that you respawn at whenever you die. So be aware of that too. Around the corner here, we've got a guy who's shooting arrows at us. We're going to go ahead and grab a heater shield. And the longsword. Now these are my character types or classes starting gear. If you're playing a magic build, you actually get another item a little further up. I'll call it out when we see it. We do have the ability now to block, so you can hold L1 or left bumper to block. You can also press L2 in order to parry. We'll talk more about parrying here in a little bit. For now, though, we're going to go ahead and head behind him, and you can backstab enemies. Does a lot of damage, always good to backstab enemies. Fog doors, by the way, will open up the next area. Sometimes that can include a boss, so if you don't know what's ahead, maybe top off your health. Next, we're going to head down this path, and we're going to open up a shortcut back to the first bonfire. And then we're going to go ahead and head up and deal with our first troll. So they're going to roll a gigantic cannonball at you. Just walk into here, and we're going to talk to this guy. This is the unnamed knight who ended up dropping us the key to our jail cell earlier. So he's going to give us an Estus flask, he's going to give us a key, and then unfortunately he's going to die. Now you can, of course, help him along with that if you would like, but we're going to go ahead and just leave him to die. Down here is, of course, the bonfire, and you'll notice that we just got 5 Estus flasks. Whenever you rest at a bonfire, your Estus flasks will refill up to 5. We'll talk more about kindling and how to get more than 5 a little later. For now, though, we're going to go ahead and head up and deal with this guy. Using the key that we got, we're going to go ahead and head in here. And off to the right here will be your last starting item if you are a magic class. For now, though, we're going to come over here and deal with these enemies. And in here is a guy that you are meant to try to parry. Now, I'm going to tell you right now, parrying is something that you don't absolutely have to learn in this game, but it will be beneficial to you if you can get it down fairly early. In addition, the final boss can be parried. However, no other boss in the game can be parried. So consider that. Don't worry too much about it, though, if you can't do it. But basically, you're going to wait for the enemy to try to attack you, press L2, and then press R1 to riposte. And with that, we're going to go ahead and head over to the boss arena. So I recommend two-handing for this fight. We're going to walk into here and do a plunging attack off of the ledge here. He has a few attacks. He has a left swing, he has a right swing. He'll do a kind of a downward pound with his weapon if you're further away. He'll also pound the weapon in front of his stomach if you are closer. That attack, by the way, has some range to it, so the radius of the attack is larger than your roll. So if you are right up on him and you try to roll away, you'll probably still take some damage from it. That being said, none of his attacks are all that damaging. His last attack, though, is going to be to jump up into the air and do a butt slam. That one can be kind of dangerous. So, but it is really heavily telegraphed, and you should be able to get away from it just by walking away. For now, though, we're going to go and walk through here and drop off. Plunging attack with R1. There's his jumping attack. And he's dead. So we're going to get a big Pilgrim's Key, which opens up the door in front of us. We'll also get a Humanity, which is something we'll talk about a little bit later. Notice, by the way, that we just got 2,000 souls. Souls are the lifeblood of this game, and they are both your currency as well as your key to upgrading your levels. So if you die in this game, you will drop them in a puddle on the ground. As long as you return to that puddle and pick them up, you'll get back whatever souls you dropped. If you die again, though, you will lose whatever you had dropped. So we're going to head up here, around the corner, for a soul item. Now, soul items are good because soul items do not drop whenever you die. And so you'll want to use these, which give you a certain amount of souls for each one. You'll want to use them before you're about to actually spend some souls, so maybe on levels or maybe on gear. For now, though, we're going to go ahead and head up. And a crow is going to take us to Firelink Shrine. Now, Firelink Shrine is basically the hub world for this game. Everything kind of branches off from here. And that's kind of important because the game doesn't really give you any specific directions on which way to go. But right off the bat, there are basically 3 paths that you can start with. And the idea is that you would go down one path, get stuck, go down another path, get stuck, go down the third path, get stuck. And then you'll come back to the first path and realize, hey, I can get a little farther this time. That's really the loop that this game has. And so you are meant to kind of figure out things on your own in that way. That being said, though, I am going to give you kind of in my opinion, the best route to take in this game that will get you from point A to point B in a reasonable curve of difficulty. For now, though, we're going to go ahead and sit at the bonfire, and you'll notice that we have a few new options. We have the ability to level up, to kindle, and to reverse hollowing. We're going to come back to talk about kindling, reverse hollowing, and humanity a little later. For now, though, let's go ahead and level up. And here we have our stats. Now, I'm going to recommend, basically, that we kind of follow the vitality and endurance route up to 20, which is what I'm going to do. Once we get vitality and endurance up to 20, we're going to move over to dexterity and strength, and we're going to level those up to 20. Then we're going to come back to vitality and endurance, and we're going to level those up to 30. And then we're going to come back to strength and dexterity, and we're going to level those up to 30. However, partway through this run, we're going to end up running into a weapon that requires 16 strength. So we are going to end up taking kind of a short detour off of that track in order to level up our strength to 16. But outside of that, we are going to keep to that vitality and endurance to 20, strength and dexterity to 20, vitality and endurance to 30, strength and dexterity to 30. Once we reach 30, some of the stats that we have start running into soft caps, which is basically just we're going to get diminishing returns on our main stats for those. So that's something to keep in mind. That being said, I will kind of direct you where to go once we reach those soft caps, but it's going to be quite a while before we reach that point. That being said, though, we're going to go ahead and continue. this guy is the Crestfallen Warrior. Come over here and talk to him. And he'll tell you a little bit about kind of the goal of an undead like yourself. And basically you need to ring 2 bells of awakening, which will unlock a place called Sen's Fortress, which is kind of like the jumping off point to Anar Londo, which is one of the, I guess you could say, famous places of this game. So anytime you're talking to an NPC and you want to progress their quest or their dialogue, make sure to talk to them until they repeat themselves. Anyway, we're going to go ahead and head down. Make sure, by the way, that you have spent all your souls, because we're about to go on a suicide run. And a suicide run is basically going to be done because we can get an item a little earlier than we otherwise would, and it'll be really beneficial to us going forward. So we're going to head down here, head down this elevator, and we're about to go down to an area called the New Londo Ruins. And this is one of those 3 paths that I talked about before, and it normally is the 3rd path that you typically end up getting stuck in. Out here, we're going to make a left. You can either drop down or just go around and grab this soul item down here. Next, we're going to go down here, come out here, and head inside and up this staircase. So this is one reason why we got the master key. Grab a couple of early soul items. Next, we're going to head down here. I'm going to go ahead and take a quick detour to talk about a vendor that is here. So on the left here is a blacksmith and a sorcerer. So he will help you by repairing your gear. Repairing is important because if your gear breaks, it'll basically become ineffective. So swords will do a pittance for damage, and your gear, your armor won't defend you for crap. So you definitely want to keep your gear regularly repaired. Later we'll be able to repair our own gear, but for now there are a couple of different blacksmiths that you can go to, this being the one at this location. He's got a few items for purchase. If you are a sorcery type and you have high intelligence, then you can buy a couple of these items from him. These are spells. And then he's also got a catalyst, which is required for casting sorcery spells. Otherwise, though, we're just going to go ahead and continue. Circle around here, and we're going to keep the broken wall to our right. Out here we have an Estoc. A little heavier weapon than what we currently got, but not a great weapon in my opinion. Over here we're going to roll into this barrel, or vase, for a transient curse. Transient curses, by the way, allow us to hit ghost enemies, and we're actually about to run into some ghost enemies. However, our goal is not to actually complete this area. Our goal is to get a single item from this area, which is right inside there. So we have to go around. There is a little, very skinny path right there that leads into this kind of broken out building. And we're going to be unable to do any damage to these enemies. I don't recommend using the transient curses because it takes too many hits to worry about doing this right now. To complete this area, I should say, right now. But we can definitely come in here and get the item. There's the enemy. They have long reach, so just stay away from them if you can. And then run down here. Get the item, and if you can get back safely, great. If you can't, that's fine too. Our goal is not to actually complete this area. Our goal is just to get the item and then make a run for it. So if you're lucky, you might get away like I did. I probably get away, I don't know, maybe 2 out of every 3 or 4 times. Anyway, we're going to go ahead and head back now. So the item that we just got is a Firekeeper soul. In this game, Firekeepers are responsible for keeping bonfires lit. And you'll notice that there's not a bonfire in sight in this place because this place's Firekeeper appears to be dead. So if we can take the Firekeeper soul back to another Firekeeper, however, they will improve our healing with our Estus flask. So it'll make our heals more potent. So we're going to go ahead and head back up. we're about to meet our firekeeper, Anastasia. Or Anastasia? Not sure which. Anyway, talk to her, and she will increase your Estus Flask to +1, so you'll heal more now with each time you use your Estus Flask. Speaking of which, you'll notice that our Estus Flask is now up to 10 in count. Coming over here, we have a humanity item, and now we're going to go ahead and talk about what humanity and kindling are. So, resting at this bonfire, we ended up getting 10 Estus Flasks this time around. And the reasoning for that is that this bonfire is kindled. So, most of the bonfires in the game are not kindled, and in order to kindle bonfires and make them give you 10 Estus Flasks, you have to do two things. You have to first be human, and so if you're not currently human, you have to spend one of those humanity items that we just got in order to reverse hollowing. After you are human, you have to spend another in order to kindle the bonfire. So if you're already human, then you just have to spend one. Now at the top left, we have what's commonly referred to as the soft or liquid humanity. That's the humanity that you're currently carrying on you. And like souls, it drops whenever you die. So you want to make sure that you pick up your souls and whatever humanity you left if you happen to die. That being said though, just like souls, there are solidified humanity items. And in this case, I have 4 of them. So if I wanted to kindle this bonfire, assuming it could be kindled again, then I could go ahead and spend 1 humanity, and then reverse hollowing, and that would make me human. And then I could spend another 1 in order to kindle the bonfire. Now, I'll warn you, there are a lot more bonfires early on in the game than there are humanity items. And they're kind of hard to find early in the game, so I would recommend you to be careful on how many of these bonfires you kindle. I would recommend being particularly picky early on, because we are going to need about 30 of them for a quest, though I will show you how to get around that need if you happen to make some mistakes. But normally we're going to want 30 of them for a quest, so early in the game we really want to be picky about where we use them. So I will call out places that I would recommend that you kindle, especially places that we're going to be going through regularly, because you'll be able to get 10 Estus Flasks at that place instead of 5. But for now, that's basically kind of the gist on humanity. For now, we're going to go ahead and head up this path, and there are 3 paths here. We're going to take the rightmost of the 3. And this is going to take us to some firebombs. So these are basically just throwable grenades. Next, we're going to go back around, and we're going to go and head down the middle path. And this is Petrus. He is a member of the church, as well as a member of a covenant. So talk to him a few times, and he will give you a peace offering. And then he'll ask if you want to join his covenant. So, covenants are basically multiplayer components in this game. There are many different covenants in the game. Some of them are geared towards co-op, which is what this covenant is based in. So with a co-op covenant like this one, basically what this particular covenant does, the way of white, is it lowers your chances of being invaded in the game. So that's a plus. It also ends up positioning you closer to other people who are in the way of the white. So you are more likely, whenever you are getting help from other people in this game, that it's going to be people in the same covenant as you. So there are a few different co-op covenants, but there are also PvP covenants, and the PvP covenants basically unlock all of the PvP components in the game. And each one of the PvP covenants has different methods that they use for invasions, different things that they are after, and basically all of the covenants have at least some benefits or potentially rewards that you can get for participating as well. This covenant, however, its main draw is that you get to talk to this guy. You can learn a gesture from him. You can also purchase some miracle-based items from him as well. And then he also sells some talismans. That being said, we're about to find a talisman, so I don't recommend buying anything from him right now, but he does have a few things. With that, though, go ahead and actually, I forgot to tell you, go ahead and talk to him. And he'll tell you kind of about his undead mission, but he won't tell you too much. He'll eventually say, pay me 700 or however much money he asks for in order to tell you everything about what's going on. So you can basically start a mission, a quest, basically by doing that. But in our case, we're just going to leave him here. We're going to head up here. The amount of souls, by the way, that he wants goes up every level. So if you want to, you know, pay for him to give you the information, you'll probably want to do it early. So we just got a soul item up there. We're about to head down here. This is going to be a shortcut via a elevator later, but for now, just drop down. And we're going to head out here. And there are a bunch of items out here. The first one is going to be some homeward bones. These will send you back to the most recently rested at bonfire. This one is going to contain a talisman, hence why I told you not to buy one. And then it's also going to have a morning star. Let's go take a look at the morning star real quick. So right now we have a longsword equipped, and it does 80 damage, and then you notice that we're getting plus 12 next to it. And that's what we're getting from scaling. This weapon scales with strength and dexterity if you look under the param bonus section. And that shows 4 icons there from left to right. That is strength, dexterity, intelligence, and faith. So we have C rank scaling on both strength and dexterity. Now if we head down to look at the morning star, you'll notice that it has a little bit higher base damage, but we're not getting as much from the parameter bonus because it only has C rank scaling in strength. So as you can tell, technically the longsword is a better weapon. That being said, though, the difference is in the details. The Morningstar has 300 under Ox effects for bleed. So bleed is a status effect that builds up a bar as you hit enemies with it. And once the bar reaches 100%, it'll instantly do a large chunk of their health, usually between 30 and 70% of their total health. So that can be a huge benefit if you are fighting against some of the early bosses in the game. So I'm going to recommend we equip it. And then finally, we're going to come back here and we're going to grab a cracked red-eye orb. And this is actually key to starting invasions. So you can basically use this in order to begin invasions in other players' games. They are consumable, however, but later we'll run into a guy who will give us an uncracked version that has unlimited uses. For now, though, we're going to head down this path. And we're going to grab Lloyd's Talismans. Got 4 of those. And what these do is, whenever you use it, anyone who's near you cannot heal themselves using Estus flasks. So really good weapon for dealing with people online who are spamming their Estus flasks. There are a couple of other uses that we'll talk about a little bit later, but for now, we're about to run through another suicide run. So this is the graveyard, another area that leads to a area that we're not supposed to be going to yet. But you could absolutely go through here if you were experienced, but we're going to basically collect all the items here. So what's here is a soul item. You can see that in the top left there. There's a path we're going to follow to a large tombstone, and then at the tombstone there's a Zweihander, which is a really nice ultra great sword. To the left of that there's some binoculars. To the right of that there's a winged spear. And we're going to basically grab that item and then come back this way. As we come back, we're also going to run into a round shield as well as another soul item. So we're going to head down here and be aware that these skeletons cannot be killed without a weapon that's divine, which we don't have access to yet. So don't worry about wasting your time with them right now. Just collect the items and run. So here's the Zweihander. We're going to head down here. And if you don't survive, don't worry about it. That's why this is a suicide run after all. There's the winged spear. We're going to drop off here in front of the tree and head down this path to get the round shield. And then we're going to head up to the other end of the graveyard for a soul item. And we died. That, by the way, is bleed. So that's what you'll get. You'll see this blood loss thing pop up if you were being afflicted with bleed. Anyway, we're going to go ahead and take the leftmost path this time. This is actually the direct route back to the graveyard. Now, if you did not successfully get all the items, you can drop off here for the final soul item. You can then take that path where my head is, and that'll take you to the round shield. And then about where my head is, right there, is where you'll find the first of the soul items that kind of begins the trek. You could also take the right path here, and that'll take you to the winged spear. In our case, though, I'm going to go ahead and head down and grab my souls. All 61 of them. And we got a couple of items on the outskirts of Firelink that I'm going to grab real quick. So, around the corner here is another soul item. And we're being chased by a Sketty. Come on. Hit me. Hit me with your best shot. So you can kick them. I'll talk about how to kick here in a minute. Bye.
Bye.
Anyway, so if you want to kick people, you can use a direction followed by R1 and kick people off ledges. It'll also kick their shield out from in front of them. So, really nice. Anyway, we're going to go ahead and head up here. And we're going to go around. For another soul item. And I'm going to drop down. So you'll notice that there is an open chest back here. Later in the game, we'll be occasionally getting items that if you don't actually pick them up, they will seemingly disappear. However, they will typically come to this chest, which will be closed if it happens to contain any items. Shouldn't run into that as long as you're following this walkthrough, but it is there if you need it. For now, though, we're going to head back to the bonfire. If we were being chased, by the way, to the bonfire will deactivate, and you'll have to deal with whatever enemies show up with you here. So be aware of that if you're being chased, that you will have to deal with the enemies. In our case, though, I'm going to go ahead and use all of my soul items. And this should give us enough souls for another couple of levels. Now, as you're selecting the item, by the way, you will be asked how many of them you want to use. One quick, cheap way to do it is to hit the down arrow. And if you've got more of that type of item, you can basically use the down arrow to select all. And that works for both humanity as well as souls. Alright, so now we are at level 11, and with that said, we're about to head into the next area, which is the Undead Burg. For now, though, I think this is going to wrap out this episode. Thank you, everybody, for watching. Please like, subscribe, comment, let me know what you thought, and I'll see you in the next one. Later.